here with the mom of one of my newer and just remarkable mentees, Priya Ivan. I'm so excited about it. So just for the benefit of framing the conversation, tell us a little bit about your background.
My husband is a physician. I've done my engineering and then I did my MBA. So we met when Ivan was doing his residency. We were in New Jersey for a little bit and then we moved to Florida. We had the kids after we moved here. We've been here for a good 16, 17 years. Besides being with the kids, I'm there in the office when the kids are in school taking care because my husband is a solo physician. So I run the office.
Okay.
That's what I do.
Are you a physician as well, or?
No, I did my engineering and then I did my MBA after that.
Okay.
No, I'm not a doctor. Yes.
And may I ask where you did them?
Yeah. Sure. I did my engineering in India at REC Surathkal, and I did my in Philadelphia at Drexel University.
At Drexel, okay, right next door.
Yeah.
I went to school. Fantastic program.
Yes.
And where in India does your family come from?
South India, from Chennai.
Okay, from Chennai. And then Ivan, your husband, your amazing husband, he is from Sri Lanka. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And I'm working with your son, Sean, right now. Tell us a little bit about Sean and his background and where he is in school.
Sure. He's a sophomore in the IB program. And as we know, he's extremely bright and he's just been a gift to us. He's a really good teenager. He doesn't have his moments, very understanding, very loving. But he is a teenager, and sometimes it's just hard for me to get him to do things as and when I tell him. But yeah, so he's doing great. And of course, we met up 3 months back through another friend. And I just thought this was the only missing piece to make him stay on track till he got to college, because that was the only thing that I felt I wasn't able to do.
You have 2 children, is that correct?
Yes.
You have Ivan, and then you have a younger daughter, and her name is Maya, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And Maya is in 5th grade, is that correct?
She's in 5th grade, yes.
She's in 5th grade, and I've had the pleasure of meeting Maya, and we'll get into the context under which I met Maya, which was part of your son's story. And as I've told you before, she's 10 years going on 25. She's just so incredibly poised. But let's get back into a comment that you talked about before, where I think we've been working together actually a little bit over 3 months. In my recollection, it's going on 4. So 4 and a half.
Yeah, we started in August, yes.
Yeah. What was your driving force behind looking for somebody to help Sean with college? And what were you looking for in a mentor?
When we met with you, it wasn't like we were actually looking for a mentor. One of our friends had spoken about you. They had decided to go with you to mentor their daughter. So when he started talking about what it is that you do, we just had one telephone interview with you. And like I told you, studies have never been an issue for Sean. He's always been acing from whenever. But the only thing that I felt I couldn't get him to do was like kind of stay on track with things leading up to college. And every time we spoke about it, I know he's just a sophomore now, but we just wanted to get that anxious part of making sure that he goes into the right college that he needs to get into off of our table. Right. We wanted somebody to guide him. A few things from our conversation that I really liked is, besides just studies and tests that he needs to take, just overall developing his interests in other things like finance, starting workshops, how to make money, just the day-to-day aspects of life. It's not something like that all the parents talk to the kids about, and that education is not provided in school. And I really wanted that for Sean. It's one of the biggest things that I wanted for Sean, the exposure to managing money, learning how to manage his finances and doing workshops, because tell me a way that I can make money. But then we're just so busy with our stuff. And I'm like, this chore for me, do that chore for me. But when he started talking about workshops that he can do, those are all things that would really help him in the long run. Mm-hmm. That's what I got really excited about, things outside of just getting into the school that he has to get into.
Yeah, my recollection was that it was a very exciting conversation from the word go. And when you think about taking me out of the equation, when you think about hiring somebody to work with your kids on any level, whether it's a tutor or somebody to help them out, or what's your hit on qualifications versus fit? A lot of people have qualifications, but what, as a parent, what's your view and your perspective on it's being a good fit for your kids with a particular person versus just their qualifications?
Sure. I think the respect that they show for that person is what would matter the most, because then it shows that the kid's going to be listening to what they're saying. So when they start valuing the input that the mentor is giving them, that would come only out of respect and thinking that the mentor knows what he's talking about more than mom and dad.
Sure, sure.
Yes.
Coming back to a comment that you made earlier, it's fascinating, and you and I have had the good fortune to speak about this, along with a couple of meetings that I've had with your amazing husband, Ivan, was that difference, that delta, that space between being a parent and
Mhm.
being a mentor. And I wonder if you could speak about that, because you've mentioned it a couple of times so far, that for lack of a better way of summing it up, you're feeling, wow, if my son would only do these things in this order, come home and have a snack and then do his homework and then do this, would make perfect sense. This would
Mhm.
make perfect sense to me as a mom. But kids don't always follow that path. I wonder if you could speak to the sense of whether it's frustration or joy or your feelings around that disconnect and where those feelings have gone along the course of our work together.
With Sean, since fifth grade, I haven't had to overlook what he does. So he does everything when it needs to be done, but it's not like he gets ahead of the game. He's always waiting till the last minute. A lot of boys are that way. And being a woman, being a mother, we're always like, get on it now, get on it now. I think as a mother, you nag your kid enough about enough things, about eating on time, waking up on time, putting stuff away, that this is one additional thing that we had to nag them about. We didn't want them to feel that it was a nag. We wanted them to feel that this is something that they need to do for themselves,
Right.
as opposed to them doing it for us. I think just coming from somebody else besides me or Ivan, I thought would help him because to be honest, I don't like to advise my kids a lot. I just like to be a friend to them because growing up, like anytime my dad would sit me down and advise me, I just used to feel so tired and I want to sit. I just don't want to be sitting here. So I'm very conscious about giving advice to the kids. But a lot of times when Ivan talks too, I just feel like I don't want them to get bored, or I'm very conscious about what their thought process is when
Sure.
we're sitting and trying to tell them how life is. So we wanted somebody outside of us who's as caring about his well-being to guide him through that.
What's your understanding of mentorship? I think you have a pretty good understanding of that, but what's your interpretation based on our work together and then your understanding of what a mentor is
Yeah.
coming into this? Because I believe when we spoke initially,
Yeah.
you and Ivan had both had mentors in India and Sri Lanka, respectively, which is a rarer thing to have in the United States. What's your understanding of what a mentor does?
I'm sorry then, but Ivan and I have not had mentors.
Oh, you've never had mentors. Okay, so
No, we've never had
when
mentors.
I'm wrong, I'm 150% wrong.
You're fine. You're
The
fine.
name
You're
of
fine.
being wrong.
You're fine. You're
Okay, no,
fine.
cool.
We haven't had mentors.
But given that, did you have any understanding of what a mentor does versus a tutor?
No, so a tutor is somebody who helps your child with the subject that he's having difficulty with, but the mentor does not teach them anything that's taught in school. It's the other aspects of life that is not taught in school, and learning the child to figure out what his strengths and weaknesses are,
Right.
to focus more on the strengths and bring that out, which is going to help him because all of us have our strengths and our weaknesses. Not all of people's strengths are identified by the parents or by their teachers. You need somebody who's not doing that job to sit and observe them, learn with them, and all the exercises that you've been offering him in the last 3 to 4 months is just so different. And that's not what I thought it would be because initially, of course, it's the college process. And again, even the school was not so important for us, Dan, because if he gets into an Ivy League with a good scholarship, by all means, we'll be very happy. But UF is a great school too. I don't doubt that Sean will get a really good scholarship to get into UF. It's for that purpose that we wanted a mentor. I think it's mostly to just help him in the other aspects of life.
This is very much in sync and in line and dovetails with my philosophy. And we talked about this before, that it's not about where you go, it's about how you show up where you go. All things being equal, would it be lovely if Sean were offered admission to Harvard or Yale or Penn? But
Sure.
my understanding, we talked about this in the beginning, that's less important that he end up at a school in which he's happy,
Sure.
and he's a happy kid anyway.
He
But can you
is.
speak to a little bit to that, lean in a little bit more to that? What is your hope in life for Sean long term? Is it that he is successful or happy, or as a parent, can you speak to what you hope for your child in the short, medium, and long term?
Yeah. Number one, happy. Always. I've had this conversation with family, and anytime we talk about what we want for our kids, I want them to be happy and content with life. If you learn to be happy, then you're going to be happy doing whatever it is that you're doing. And I know he will be successful because he's that kid, but you can be successful and still not be happy. So if he's happy, he'll be successful.
True. Can you walk into that a little bit about you can be happy, you can be successful and not happy? It's a fascinating comment. Can you expand on that a little bit?
I know so many people who have done so well in their career, I mean, their finances and all of that. But when you talk to them, they don't make you feel happy to be around them. Just talking to somebody, you know where they are, what space they are in. And a lot of times I feel like they need to be in a much better space than they are in because there's so much that they need to be thankful and grateful for. So why are they not exhibiting that? Yeah. Sean's a very happy kid by himself. And his thinking process too, it just blows my mind because I've always had conversations with him. I confide in him. There are so many things that I've shared with him from the time when he was very small. And I would almost feel one of my friends my age is giving me advice on whatever I told him. The way he would respond, his response to what I tell him would just be so mature that I would always be like, is that coming out of this little kid's mouth? So he's very measured. He knows what he's talking about. So I've never doubted anything he does because I just feel like he's very clear in his head.
Can you give an example of maybe a conversation you've had with Sean where the level of his wisdom or his insight has surprised you and maybe not surprised you at the same time?
2 days back, this happened. Maya's on YouTube a lot. She's 10 years old. She's on winter break. She's on YouTube a lot. So she keeps watching this 13-year-old girl who's showing a nighttime routine and whatnot. While we were coming on the plane after our Thanksgiving break, I saw her watch that and just watching. I know she's at that age and she's watching all these bloggers talk about this toy and that toy and this night cream and that night cream and like whatnot. But then the dad was videoing her and telling her to just coming in snippets to say what's going on. So yesterday, Maya didn't do as much reading as she promised me she would. So I said till she finished that book, she's not going to touch her iPad from today on because we just got back. So then I was telling Sean that she's always on YouTube, Sean watching whoever that girl is. And immediately Sean was like, yeah, why do you watch her, Maya? I really don't like the dad, is what he said. I'm an adult and I just hate that parents make money off putting the kids out there doing what they do. For Sean to say that he doesn't like the dad because he just comes for a minute in that whole video clip anytime she's on.
Right.
But I think he just understood what was behind the whole thing. I was just surprised that he felt that way because being an adult, like I understand why I feel the way I do. But yeah, so that's just one of the things. When I have this conversation with Maya and when I tell her she needs to do something for this reason, Sean, his reasoning would be the same as my reasoning for doing it, even though they're just 5 years apart. This morning, I was just like, I had to leave early in the morning. So I left a note for Maya saying, Maya, you're not supposed to use your computer till you finish that book. This is out of love. Maya was obviously very upset because she still has quite a bit to finish. But then when Sean woke up, I was like, she's not supposed to use a computer till she finishes a book. And then Sean was like, very good, Amma, very good. She should have finished this and the next book by now. So even though he's on his computer a lot, he always makes sure that he stays on track with his chores. She's a little kid.
She's a little kid, but evolving quickly. Wait, can you speak to your perception of the speed with which kids grow up, not only physically, but mentally and intellectually? We've had this conversation before, but I wonder whether you could comment on that. Are you often surprised or not by the speed, and maybe it's not linear, maybe it's in steps, by which your kids will come out with comments and you say, oh my gosh, is that my kid? Can you speak to experiences with that? We've talked about that before, but
yes, all the time. All the time. I keep telling all my friends with younger kids, I'm like, just enjoy this because suddenly you just feel they're adults because the way they talk, like till last year, Maya would believe in the elf and Santa brought her gifts. And of course, this year we had the conversation about Santa and it happens when it has to happen. But even Maya's comments, even her one-line comments, I'm really surprised how the way she words stuff. It's so adulty, not in a bad way, but their command over the English language is very strong. The way they present certain things to me just blows my mind. I think that comes from the amount of reading that they do and all of that too. One more thing I have to tell you about Sean, about the cell phone. A lot of kids get a cell phone when they're in third, fourth, fifth grade. Like Maya's class, there are a lot of kids who have a cell phone. Sean, there was really no need for a cell phone because I was always dropping them, picking them up, dropping them in classes. There was never a time when they had to reach anybody. But then until Sean was in seventh grade, there was no talk about a cell phone. I just told him, so we decided we'll get him a cell phone when he turns 13. That was in the beginning of eighth grade.
Right.
When he was in seventh grade, of course, all his friends had a cell phone. And then I just asked him, Sean, you understand that we're not getting you a cell phone because we don't trust you. It's just, it's a distraction and you don't need a cell phone because there's really no reason for you to have a cell phone. Until that day, or till we got him the cell phone, Dan, he's never asked me for a cell phone. Never once asked me if I can have a cell phone, even though every single one of his friends had one. So when I told him that, he just started tearing up because inside, I guess he was hurt that he was the only one who didn't have a cell phone, but he never asked me for it. And of course, when he turned 13, we got him the cell phone. But it's just the level of the niceness about the child to not once say, hey, all of my friends have a phone. Why am I not having it?
You expressed one concern so far was that Sean is, for lack of a better word, in colloquial American English, we'll call it a deadline dancer. He waits until the last minute to get things done, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes when working very quickly produces great results. In my opinion, if it's working for him, great. My perception is that he manages time well. Then one of the things that I'll do every so often, I will gift mentees certain things as it comes along. So one of the things that I gave Sean this year was a planner, like an actual 12-month planner I use, physical planner where you can write with a pen in there and put in stickies, very old school. And he had actually asked for that because he had said it's not working planning on the phone or Trello boards. And he's actually using it actively. I wonder whether you've seen any difference along the way in which he starts to plan or get a little bit ahead of the curve, because we've talked about before, and as we all know, the level of complexity when it comes to planning things out increases dramatically over time. It'll be harder next year in 11th grade and harder as we go through the process, although we'll be starting the application process earlier. Have you seen any differences in him, in Sean and your son, in the way that he is planning things and managing his time? Or are we still at the very beginning stages?
We're still at the beginning stages, I think, Dan, especially because they're on vacations. We haven't really been, but a few things is like on Monday or Tuesday, he wanted my computer while we were in Clearwater to get on SATs and look into Princeton Review and Prep Scholar before he got on the Zoom call with you because he knew he had to have answers for you. His brain just absorbs things so much faster. He just wrote down the pros and cons. It would have taken me like at least a half day, maybe a three-fourths of a day to go through everything. But he had it laid out so well. He just showed it to me and he was like, what do you think I should take? And it was within an hour or two that he had gone through the pros and cons of it. So I was very happy that he was doing it because if you were not in the picture, I don't think we would have had that conversation now. It probably would have been next year this time that we would have had this conversation.
My recollection, and I say this with respect to Prep Scholar and the other things out there, was that he landed on Princeton Review because he felt that it had more bite-sized modules for him. There's no one right way to prepare for the SAT or the ACT. But where we landed on this, and you and Ivan and I, in our most recent kind of group parent discussion, had talked about what do you think the way is to optimize for this? Given that he's still a sophomore, with the idea that we want to get him more or less a year ahead of the curve to give him that unfair advantage, that he's better than other kids. In fact, maybe the opposite, so that he's able to help other kids on the way. But to give him that breathing room so that when he enters his senior year, he'll have almost everything done and be able to enjoy that rite of passage. He's on it. And what you and I and Ivan had discussed, and then I discussed with Sean, is it's that kind of Karate Kid, wax on, wax off, just a little bit every day, 10 minutes until he takes his SAT and just gets that out of the way with the understanding that it's a test on taking tests. And what I really love, one of the many reasons I so enjoy and love working with your son is that, and this has evolved over time, and I want to get to that with a comment that you made, he internalizes these just comments from me, which are not directives. They're not, hey, Sean, I want you to do this. And we will move into that space a little bit where I think it's in his best interest. But they're suggestions, and they're suggestions because I want to empower him to make his own choices on these. But he runs with those, and he took action on these. And now he said, even though it is the end of 2023 right now, with just a couple of days left in the holiday break, and I challenged him yesterday, tasked him with just break it open, sign up for Princeton Review, and just do a couple of minutes on that. So you can actually say, hey, Mom, Dad, Dan, hey, world, I began my SAT studies in 2023. You mentioned that Sean was a deadline dancer, that he starts things at the last minute. And with that sort of shift, that paradigm shift of just starting things even a little bit early with that philosophy that you don't have to get things perfect, you just have to get them going. Do you
Yes.
see that in him? I know that Sean doesn't share everything with you, which is
He doesn't. And a lot of things is just he's so nonchalant about a lot of his achievements. Maya would come and tell me anything and everything. And with Sean, sometimes he gets all these letters from his teachers about how well he's done. Just like in eighth grade, I think they were gifting a kid these different cards for any good deed that they did. And they selected 5 kids from all of middle school to go and represent because they got the most number of cards in the year. Not once did he even tell me that he got a card, leave alone that he got the most number of cards for that year. So he just told me, as a matter of fact, I'm supposed to go there. And I'm like, so on what basis did they pick you? And then he tells me they give these cards out like anytime they did something good. And I was one of the kids who got the most number. And I'm like, how many kids did they select? And it was 5 kids out of I don't know how many kids in school. I keep making fun, saying even if Sean buys a house in Malibu later on in life, he won't think it's a big deal for him to tell us that he did do
right,
that because he's
right,
just like nothing is a big enough achievement for him. Like his PSAT, we kept asking him, and he had gotten 1280 without any preparation. I think he just prepared for one day before. I
right.
just told him do a few tests,
Mhm.
and 1280, he said he got the highest in his class. But I never heard the score from him. When I met with the counselor, I didn't want to ask him because I thought that he hadn't done well, and that's the reason why he wasn't telling us this. So when
Right.
I met with the counselor and when I asked them, they told me it was he, and that in his grade he had gotten the highest, but then he just didn't think that was something that he needs to share with us.
My observation on this one, and again, I'd like your perspective, is that Sean has that rare quality of, and when I was in my clinical rotations as a mental health professional working solely with kids,
Mhm.
one of the things that is, and we've spoken about this before, your husband's
Sure.
a physician and you're well familiar with the topology of that, is that quality of resilience. Nothing really shakes Sean.
Yes.
I've never
Yeah.
seen the needle move into the freak out mode, nor have I seen it move into the, oh my gosh, I've just got to share this with everybody. Although he does display excitement, but in a different way from other kids. And I want to get into that with a specific exercise that he did with your daughter, which was very
Yes.
remarkable. 1280 out the gate is a very solid score, particularly when there's no preparation, particularly since it's a benchmark this year in his sophomore year. And then, as we all know, but for the sake of the audience, we'll talk about this here in the United States for the benefit of people who are watching this outside the United States, particularly in India and other countries. And I want to speak about that as well. When they take the SAT in 11th grade, your son will potentially qualify for the National Merit Scholarship, which with the idea that scholarships and grants and all of that are a continuum, we start to build on those. But this is something that we want to look into, yes?
Yes.
And my recollection, without having the scores in front of me, was that they were a little bit skewed. He was higher in math than he was in English, which
Hmm.
presents a real opportunity. Like his math was very strong, his English was okay, but it's not that his English skills aren't good, it's the way that it's structured. He, again, was taking those on the paper-based PSATs. Now we're going to be moving, when he takes it this spring, he'll be taking the SAT this spring, he'll be taking it on the digital side.
Digital. Yeah.
I want to get back to his sharing and not sharing some things with you, but a comment that you made before that, and assuming that you're willing to share, one of the concerns that you shared with me early on, and I'd like you to articulate this for the benefit of the people watching this, was that Sean paints a picture in the very beginning with strangers, which I was, and we're moving in past that right now. I think our relationship has evolved very quickly. I've said this in other meetings, but I'll say it again. I finish my sessions with Sean and a couple of other mentees, and I walk into the living room, and my wife asks me, who's paying who? Who's having more fun? You or Sean? And I honestly don't know. This is a co-creative process. Can you speak a little bit to the hesitancy that you expressed to me in the beginning about Sean painting a picture that
Yes.
meetings? Can you talk about
Sure.
that from the very beginning? When I was one of the problems that I thought about Dan when I was speaking to you. Can we start with that?
Yeah. So one of the issues, I think this was a month or two into you meeting with Sean. It just bothered us because it was a weekend that Ivan was off and we wanted to go down to Orlando and we were there for the weekend. He mentioned to me earlier during the week that there was a party on Saturday that he wanted to go to. And we were like, and that was it. I didn't know whose party it was, what was going on, because it's not like Sean goes to a lot of parties. Over the years, it's just been our family friends parties and whatnot. But then now he does hang out with his friends. But a lot of times, you know how guys are, they just don't plan stuff. He would say that something's happening for the weekend and we'll stay back not doing anything, but then nothing really happens because the other boys were not available or whatever. So I really don't take his word so much to heart that he has something going, because a lot of times not much happens. That Saturday we were there, and obviously there was a really big party that he was supposed to be at. Sunday morning when he woke up, he was on his phone and he didn't look okay. And I was like, is everything okay, Sean? I'd completely forgotten that there was a party on Saturday. So Sunday morning, I was like, is everything okay, Sean? He was like, yeah, everything's good. He didn't show any emotion. And the rest of the day went by. And then Sunday, we were having lunch and we were supposed to head back home. One of his friends who lives in our neighborhood, a lot of his classmates live in our neighborhood, and we've been friends with the parents since they were little. He texts me and he's, Priya auntie, when is Sean going to be here? We're waiting for him. And I had no clue that there was another party on Sunday. So when I asked him, Sean, why aren't you supposed to be at Karthik's house? Why didn't you tell us that you guys were hanging out? And then he was like, no, I told you about Saturday. There was a much bigger party and you didn't say anything about it. So I didn't think this would be a big deal. But I was like, but it's Sunday and we're heading back home anyway. So if you had something you wanted to do, we could have gone there a little bit earlier. That wouldn't have made a difference to us. It's just that Saturday night blocks the whole weekend off. So it really bothered me that my child didn't understand where I was trying to come from. It's not like I didn't want him to go and be with his friends and have fun. It's just that I didn't want to jeopardize the whole weekend. Even if that Saturday party was such a big party, he didn't explain to me that everybody's going to be there, or he just told me something's happening on Saturday. And so that was the time that I expressed to you, because he doesn't share enough for me to understand the depth of what it is, for me to pay enough attention to it.
And do you think that was because, and this doesn't sound like a therapy session. I hope it's okay for me to keep asking questions.
It's
great. Do you think that's, I don't want to say in Sean's case, a lack of confidence, because I'm not picking that up. Do you think it was a people-pleasing thing? Do you think it's go with the flow and don't make waves? Where do you think that came from? Because it certainly changed over the last couple of months. Where do you think that stemmed from? Was that baked into his personality, or where do you think that dynamic, not asking for what it was that he wanted, came from?
Yes. He is a big people pleaser, but he has control over the situation. Like I am very nice. Suddenly I'll erupt if things are not going, like they're not getting ready fast enough, or I'll just be like, I will erupt like a lot of mothers do. And Sean will never fight me back. He'll just be like, okay, Amma, I got it. He'll just calm me down immediately to the point where I can't yell at him for 2 minutes straight. It would be 30 seconds into me yelling at him on why he's not off the couch or whatever. But he'll be like, Amma, I got it. Don't be upset. He's just got this thing to calm anybody down immediately. And he's never once gotten upset or exploded for any reason. He doesn't get broken at all. I think one would be the people pleasing thing, but I also feel something's important enough for Sean. He does make it clear to us. They've been doing piano since he was in second grade. And in middle school, I really wanted him to get into band, because I'd heard a lot of great things about his middle school band, how good the teacher was and how they go and perform. I tried so hard to convince him to get into band, but he was like, no, band takes up 2 of the electives and I want to do visual comm and other things which are of more interest to me. And he was very assertive about it. With Maya, a lot of times I feel like I can brainwash her and get her to do a few things. But with Sean, once he says, this is what it is, this is what it is. Likewise, even the other day, there was something Ivan and I were talking about. When it comes to studies, anything important, he's very set. And I'm just confused, Dan, because certain things he's very clear about what he wants and he gets it across immediately that we back off. But certain things, I feel like he just doesn't want to create any waves and he just wants to go with the flow.
And you expressed this to me in the form of a mild concern, and I believe that you asked me, please correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, is this something now that you can fix, can talk to Sean about and maybe help unpack?
Yes.
And did this concern come from a place of anxiety or worry, or were you aware of the fact that this is a natural, because this is the first time you don't go through being a mom and dad of a teenager until you go through being a mom and dad of a teenager. What emotions did that cause in you when you made that call to me?
I think I was just sad that he doesn't understand where I'm coming from. First of all, I was sad that he missed out on something which he would have had fun doing. The second thing is I just felt like he needs to know me enough to tell me when it's important to him. Then I'll make sure it happens. I just didn't think that weekend was a big deal. On that Sunday, I felt really bad that he missed out. And
I got that. Can you relate what's going on with respect to Sean? We'll move on to another topic with his sort of growing away from you, which in psychology is the concept of called healthy differentiation. It's when kids start to escape the gravitational pull of planet parents, but in a loving and appropriate way. He still wants your help, but he doesn't quite want quite as much of it. He wants independence, but he doesn't want complete independence. And this is actually a very healthy thing for the most part. That in mind, you're still a mom, you love your child. So is that delta between, yes, I understand theoretically where this is going, but I'm seeing this happen in real time and I'm not able to reconcile those. Does that show
Yes.
up for you? And does it also show up for Ivan, your husband?
Yes, Ivan, I'm not sure if it shows up as much. But for me, yes, like I told you, since he was in till he was in middle school, summer was always big for me to go back to India and Sri Lanka, be with family. Sean has never, ever, of course, growing up, thought about anything. Like I'll book when we need to leave. We come back when I decide we come back. That's just the way it's been. So I think last year, I'm happy it's changing because we're very particular about taking time off when the kids are off. Not just summer, we make sure we go for a week somewhere during
Right.
a Thanksgiving break and spring break. So last year, I felt beginning of his freshman year, he was fighting me about being away throughout Thanksgiving break or throughout spring break. And last Christmas, we had gone to Canada because my brother and my parents were there, or him not having time at home. And I just couldn't understand because all he does is be on his computer or lays around the couch when he's home. So I was just like, you're blessed. Our family is blessed that we are able to take all these vacations and do what we want to do. What are you fighting with me about? You're home the rest of the year. So last year, I just felt, oh my God, what happened to my child? Like, why is he fighting me? And last summer, because usually I take the kids to India and Sri Lanka. Then Ivan comes and joins us. And then he's there for about a week. And then for 10 days or 2 weeks, we'll do some other part of the country which we haven't been to. Last year, we had planned on doing Iceland and some of Europe. And Sean was like, I just want to be away for 3 weeks. I'm good to come to India and Sri Lanka and be with you for those 3 weeks, or I'll do the other trip with Appa and everybody, but I'm not going to be gone for 6. I had to respect what he wanted because he
Sure.
was being fair. He was like, I don't want to be gone all summer. I'm willing to come for 3 to 4 weeks, but it has to be in India, Sri Lanka, or we do the other thing. We picked the Europe trip first. All of us did it. And then Ivan and Sean came back. And then Maya and I went to India for the remaining time. And
Got
so
it.
that was the first time I felt like it was a tough call, but we understood that he's in that phase where he wants to play whatever Xbox with his friends in real time. And
Yeah, we all know that there's evidence to support that playing games isn't a
yeah,
waste of time, that there's an awful lot intellectually going on, that stimulation with the brain and so forth. Sean's got that cerebral part of him, but he's also got that great sense of humor part. I wondered
yes,
before we move on to the Sri Lankan piece of it, again, with the understanding that you are of Indian extraction and your husband is Sri Lankan. An exercise that he and I tried several months ago, in which I gave him an improvisational exercise with the understanding, we talked about this early on, that I've taken a lot of classes in improvisation. My wife is the actor in the family. She's been in a million things. But what is improvisation, which is now being brought into corporations and universities, and it's been around a long time. But where I think a lot of people have that impression of improvisation, it's stand up. You get up there on stage and be funny. And it's actually the opposite. It's whatever comes your way, you just run with it. We had talked about this, you and I, and my recollection in the very beginning was that you didn't quite get in how applied improvisation impacted the program, but you were willing to see how it went. Was that a
yes,
fair comment? Okay, we got that.
yes,
You liked the way the program was done.
yes,
But I recall giving your son an activity to do, and I believe you were in your Clearwater, where I said, let's try something. And this was throwing him into the deep end. This is a second or third year improv exercise. And here's how it went, because I would ask you to talk about it, but I'm not clear whether you know what the actual directive was. Do you know what the directive was, or shall I talk about it?
no,
I know if
talk
you know
about
what
it.
the
Yeah,
outcome was.
yes,
So
yes,
the directive was this. This is about 3 months ago. I said, Sean, look around the room and find 3 objects in the room. One of them was a lantern. You have a green lantern or lamp of some sort in one of your rooms in Clearwater. And the other was a plate, some kind of a plate that was hanging on the wall, or a dinner plate or a tray. And the other was something, I can't remember what it was, a toy car or something. And I said, that's all you get. Pick a genre of story. And he said science fiction. And I said, go. You have 10 minutes to write a story about this. His initial reaction was, I don't know what to do. And I told him, whatever you do is going to be right. There's no way of failing on this. and he went away for 10 minutes. He came back with just this remarkable story, which, have you read it in the meantime? I know you didn't read it right away, but have you read the story? Has he shared it with you?
No. So after I heard it from you, I was like, why don't you share these things with us? And he was like, fine, Amma. So I know I read Maya's. I don't think I still haven't gotten to reading Sean's because he doesn't give these to us, Dan.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy because we had such a big conversation about this and we read the story. So it could be that I've read his. I'm
Okay.
sorry. It's been a
Okay.
while. So
That's all right.
yeah,
It has been a
I don't
while.
want to miss.
And actually, in our meeting yesterday with Sean, whom I interviewed, whom I had the good fortune of interviewing a while ago, and I believe I shared that interview with you, he's blossomed so much when it comes to embracing that terror of leaning into potential imperfection. He's a perfectionist and he's so strong with math and science and other subjects as well, but he likes to get things right.
Yeah.
And when we talked about the fact that there is no right, there are no mistakes, they're just learning opportunities. Can you tell us what happened when he finished the story and what he did with Maya?
So every time he finishes his chat with you, when he comes and like joins us in the living room or wherever, we'll be like, hey, Sean, how did the meeting go? So what did you guys do today? He started talking about, oh, Dan just he made me pick three objects in the room and he made me write about it for 10 minutes. And then so Maya was there too. And then she was like, oh, Ria, what did you write? So we were just talking about it. So he was like, oh, Maya, this will be a good exercise for you. Why don't you go ahead and do that? So Maya got really excited because she always likes to impress all of us. She got on and she started writing about it, which turned out really well because to my surprise, like her essay was the first essay that I read and it was really good. Like you said, these are not things that I foresaw when we decided to sign up with you. But I was like, wow, this is just testing so many different elements of how his brain works, which is not something that I would have done or his teacher would have done. So I was
Right.
very pleased. And it was a nice family time, a fresh conversation for us to have as a family too. I really enjoyed that. And I wish I could know more of what you do, which Sean would share with us, because I feel it's a different way of us bonding together over something
Sure, sure.
really nice.
As you and I, Ivan and I have spoken about, and I've spoken about this with a couple of parents, we have regular meetings every couple of months, but there's no world in which Sean couldn't take that lesson and give it to you as well, or we couldn't as a group, the four of us, you and Ivan, you and your husband, and your daughter Maya, and Sean couldn't do this together and just see how, so you can see how it goes. I
Sure.
think I think the fact that Sean ran into the next room taught Maya this. And my recollection, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that Maya came running out of the room to share her story. It was the opposite of Sean. Sean
Yes.
kept his cards close to his vest, but Maya
Yeah.
came bolting out of the room. And Maya's 10. So there's
Yeah.
5 years, 6 years between them.
Five years.
She came running out. And again, I've had the good fortune of meeting Maya, who at 10 is just so poised. And I was shocked afterwards. I'm like, she's 10 years old. And this, I think, reflects the upbringing and all of that. But the question I have for you relative to this, and we'll move on to something else. Was this your first time seeing Sean teach anything to anybody else, whether it was a family member or anything else? Because he had taught her. He took that lesson, and it was the same day. It was only a couple of hours later. Was this the first time that you saw Sean teach something to somebody else?
No, Dan, because I know he has done some math tutoring for some of the kids in the neighborhood.
Mhm.
And a lot of times when Maya's asking me like a math problem or something, the way I explain, she might not get it because I did my schooling in India. So the way I teach her would be different from how Sean would teach her.
Mhm.
He would always take that initiative to teach. But an exercise like this was a new thing that I saw him do. And also, I know I've mentioned this to you before, last year and the year before that and stuff, when we go to India. Sean's always the quiet kid. Maya's more fun loving and she's out there. So I see her be around people. It doesn't surprise me. That's just a personality. But Sean has always been the quieter kid. What I observed the last couple of years is, and with Sean, I'd always been concerned that he was quieter and he might not have a good social circle. It was always a concern. When he was very little, I was worried that there might be some kids who might bully him because he was just that quiet kid. But I've had several conversations with him about, did you ever get bullied in school in the last couple of years? And he was like, no, as long as you're with a good set of friends, nobody messes with you. And if you're alone, they do. And I see how he's blossomed in his social life too. When I was in India, I was surprised because all these kids, Sean's got this accent, he's not Indian. Some of the Indian kids can get funny and make fun of the American accent and whatnot, but he was so loved by all the kids from like a 4-year-old to a 14-year-old. Like they were all just sitting around him. Granted, they might have been playing a game or they were watching some jump
Sure.
scares or whatever, but it was just surprising that he was the center of attention. And Sean doesn't try hard to do that at all. He just has this natural, calm persona about him, which
Yeah.
is very attractive, even to kids.
No, it really is. And just to be clear, when you talk about his accent, you're talking about his accent when he speaks the Indian languages, yes? And which
Yeah,
languages are we talking about specifically? Which Indian languages are we talking about?
Tamil.
Okay, Tamil.
Yeah.
And how is his Tamil? How is his level of speech and understanding and comprehension?
Oh, he can understand very well. And now we don't speak as much. So he still converses in Tamil to my parents and some of my
Okay.
family in India,
Okay.
but he does have a decent command over the language.
I think he's just got that rare, for lack of a better word, just likable quality. He's a great listener. He's a great
Yeah.
natural listener. He
Yeah.
smiles a lot. He's got just that smile that lights, you can see from space.
Yes.
And he's got a number of interests. I wonder if you could talk about his interest in boxing. There's always this great pink Everlast boxing bag hanging in the back of his room. Can you talk a little bit
Yes.
about his interest in boxing and how that shows up?
So I used to do boxing in the gym. I ended up buying all that stuff because during COVID, we were just trying to do all sorts of things around.
Yeah.
But he's just developed an interest for boxing by just watching a lot of matches. He has DAZN, is it? Like where they have KSI, I don't know. They just keep talking about all these different matches and the subscription that he needs to get. And so again, growing up, because he was that quieter, chill kid, I was always like, go out and bounce some balls. Don't sit in the couch. I always wanted him out because you know how the kids here they go to school, come back, and they want to pop with their electronics. But now I don't have to do any of that because every 10 to 15 minutes, he just gets up and he just starts boxing. He's got this bag and he wants a full setup, which I told him, again, it's an initiative thing, Dan. We have a gym room and there are some equipment. So I told him I don't want to sell it. If you can find somebody to come and pick it up, I'll do the room up for you.
Okay.
But he hasn't taken the initiative to get somebody to come and pick it up. But he wants me to do the room for him. So I told him I'm willing to get you whatever equipment you want, but I just need what's there to be gone.
I wonder, and I could be completely wrong, whether the initiative to get the stuff out of there is based on the fact that he's not sure he wants to get rid of it. First of all, I love the fact that this full-length Everlast, like it would be in
Yes.
Rocky, would just be a beat-up old canvas bag, is pink. That was the
That's mine.
No, that's yours. That's yours. We're
Yeah,
not looking into another
yeah.
example where the apple doesn't fall far from the tree,
Yes.
so to speak, when it comes to another discipline. But it's great that he does that. It's a
Yes.
testament to how close you all are. I want to move into something else that's very important here. You do these summer trips back home, and you called me a couple of months ago and said, listen, Dan, we want to start planning this summer, the summer between his sophomore year, with the understanding he's moving into the second half of his sophomore year right now, and it will be terribly long before moving into the college application process. And as you and I have spoken about, and I've spoken about with Sean, we're trying to get him a year ahead of the curve so that by the time he enters his senior year, he'll have everything done, his applications, all of that. The reason I bring this up is that you called me a couple of months ago and said, Dan, we're planning this trip to India. Can you talk about that conversation that we had and your concern and what you had asked me to work on?
Yeah, since he would be getting into, there are a few summer camps that we wanted him to do. And obviously we wanted him to do at least a week or 2 weeks here in the US in a good camp, because I know UF has a lot of CPET programs and all of that they offer. And in between for international exposure, this was my way of convincing him to come to India and Sri Lanka during the time that we are there to do a camp there, because there are a lot of underprivileged kids there. There are so many things that he can do to help people there. One of my friend's kids went to Vietnam for a week or two to a medical camp. And they saw people give birth to kids, just how the hospitals were under-equipped. There was a lot of reality check on a third world country for them. So it was a great experience for them. And I was just thinking, why go to Vietnam when there's so much in India and Sri Lanka that he can get into? I was just trying to brainstorm with you on what we can do to help him do it there, like what the next step is, how do I go about it? That was a very, let's talk about it and figure something out for Sean, because my whole focus at that point was I wanted him to do something useful for summer, but also if you would come with us, that would be great because we'll all be together.
You'd all be together, and my recollection, correct me if I'm wrong, is it's about a month in total, maybe 5 weeks in total, in which you'll split it between India, where your parents, you still got I think it's your folks or your mom who lives there. Is that
Yes, all of my family is in India, but my dad does his business in Sri Lanka, so they're between India and Sri Lanka. And
okay?
Ivan's family, all of them are in Sri
And
Lanka.
then Ivan's family is primarily in Sri Lanka,
Yeah,
and then you've got family here as well.
yeah.
And where did we land on that conversation, and where are we right now, 2 months later, with respect to Sean's potentially doing something of great importance over there? Where have we landed so far?
Yes. So we had spoken about him tutoring because that's something that he does enjoy doing. And we started off by saying that maybe he can do math and English. I had spoken to my brother, and he said he knew somebody at the British Council in Colombo, and we could see if there's a way that he can teach English to underprivileged kids there. In the meantime, my sister-in-law got me connected to one of Ivan's cousins, who's a principal in a school in Sri Lanka. And a lot of his students have gotten into really good schools here in the US. He was well aware of what really needs to be done. He started talking about maybe he can do a couple of workshops or a couple of weeks in one of the schools where he knows somebody who can make this happen. Initially, when we started talking, we were talking about math and science because those are what Sean's strong points are. But then, obviously, when we spoke, he was talking about sending books here that Sean can learn. My concern was he has enough on his plate with trying to prepare for
Right.
SATs and schoolwork. The last thing that we want him to do is prepare for the syllabus in Sri Lanka, which is different from what we do here.
Sure.
So you and I, when we started talking, he did econ this year, and he was really taking an interest towards that because he wanted to have an interview with me for one of his classes about how we budget things. If you have a spreadsheet, how do we keep track of the monthly expenses, about the stock market, and about how many hours a month I spend on budgeting. It was such a good conversation that we had that I was really happy I had that with him because the way he took it and the questions he asked was so appropriate that I knew he understood what I was talking about. I was very happy because, like I told you, that is one thing that I really want my kids to be well educated in. When I had that conversation with Sean before his class, and of course, they have this dummy portfolio that they've created, and he had 10,000 dummy dollars invested in different stocks. Almost every day when he gets into the car, he'll be like, Amma, my thing has grown by this much. This has come up by that much. And I'm loving it that he's interested in that at this point. So I keep talking to him about how he needs to start young and investing a little bit over the long term is just going to be so much better than gambling with it. Whatever little bit of input that I can give to him at this stage, I try to do it. And we started talking about it. I was very excited because I don't know how we even ended up landing in this, but I'm so happy we did. You had mentioned about doing a workshop, a finance workshop for like kids in the neighborhood, because even adults lack that education. And a lot of parents would pay 20, 30. It's not about the money, even for Sean to feel that he's doing something, a service that he's going to get something out of would give him more of an incentive to just get a bigger audience.
It's not doing something as a teenager with the idea, oh, this is going to look good on the college application. You're doing something that's in your heart and that you love.
Yeah.
And as a natural byproduct of that, it looks good in your application because it comes from your heart. And when
Yes.
we landed on it yesterday, without spilling the beans, because I'm sure he's talked about this with you, this imaginary $10,000 that he's using with a very sophisticated application, and with the understanding that now you're a savvy investor, you invest yourself. So again, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Sean told me, and this is an astonishing number, that in the last 3 weeks, he's almost doubled that money. I think he's gone from 10,000 to 19,200.
Yeah.
What was your feeling about that, watching that happen?
Again, my feeling for him is the stock market just does this.
Sure.
And I think me growing up, I was never taught this at a young age. And I don't think I started it early enough. My thing for him is don't get too excited about how well your portfolio has done over the past 2 months. I want him to get it in his system that long-term discipline in investing is what's going to
Sure.
get him to where he needs to.
Sure.
So I was happy that he's getting excited about it, and this gave him the excitement. But I told him, don't get too excited about it, or don't get too disheartened if it goes to half of what you had invested, because that's just how the market is. And over the long run, he'll learn that it'll turn out fine.
Yeah, it's a microcosm of the we talked about before,
Yes.
where it doesn't matter where you go to school, it's
Yeah.
how you show up where you go to school. And this is true of anything else in life. With the understanding, yes, we want him to help select, and we're in the process of doing that right now, a set of schools that are right for him. but where we've landed on the project in which he will teach kids something, and with the understanding, Sean at this point wants to become a physician. Yes,
Yes.
that's where he's going with right now, and that could take many forms. But what was so fascinating for me is that Sean has gone from maybe I'll teach math or I'll teach something related to that to his being very committed to teaching financial literacy for kids
Yes.
on the ground in India and Sri Lanka this summer. And when I asked him yesterday, let's pretend that I am a kid or a parent this summer, and you need to teach me three things, because three is always a nice number. What are those three things? And I said, don't think about it, just do it. And the old Sean, I mean, like 4 months ago, would have spent some time thinking through it. It just came right out of his mouth. And has he shared that with you, like what he would do?
No, but that conversation you looped me in as well, Dan. So I was there in the room with him.
Oh,
Yes.
and what was your hit hearing your son talk about what he would teach, just off the top of his head? What were your feelings around that? What were your views on that as a savvy investor yourself?
I was very happy because the three things that he spoke was budgeting, the stock market, and your credit. What you need to do to make sure you have a good credit score. I was really happy because these are very important and basic things that you need to know regarding finance. We had a conversation about it to leave the credit part out since we're going to be doing it in India and Sri Lanka as well. That's not going to matter there, and the stock market is going to be different. We were just talking about different arenas, but yes, I was very happy for him at how fast he came out with it. And nothing was like out of whack. It was exactly what we need to. And you expanded on what else that he can talk about. It was good.
One of the things that we talked about, and this came from you as well as from a couple of other moms and dads, again, with the idea that moms are generally the gatekeepers, was that maybe it's not just for the kids, maybe it's for the parents and the kids.
Yes.
Um, and you heard that conversation. What was your reaction when we talked about that possibility?
What was my reaction?
Yeah, to expanding the program just based on input, that maybe it's not just for kids, maybe it's for kids and their parents at the time, so they can share in the experience. What was your
Yeah.
reaction?
It makes me wonder how many adults are going to come and sit there and listen to a kid teaching this. A lot of people need it. So it's a great service or a great thing that he'll be educating people about it. If
Sure. We are planning on having a conversation with your friend in Sri Lanka
yeah.
and in India. What's your hope about what he'll come away with and what he'll leave behind with the kids and the families with whom he works? At the end of the summer, if you could just project what your hopes are when he comes back this fall and begins his junior year.
My hopes are that he should have a great experience teaching. Depending on how it's received, I think he'll get a lot of fulfillment, and it'll just give him more confidence on how much he's able to help others. And so it'll help him learn in the process and give back, because this is something very basic that everybody needs. And I think only like less than 10% really have something definitely to expand on and get
It's
out
a
there.
Yeah, it's a rare quality. And the last piece, and I believe you were in this conversation. I think you chimed in. I heard you chime in off stage that this could be a project that isn't just limited to the summer. He might find a partner over there, another,
Yes.
so that this could be something that he continue on a limited basis during his
Yes.
junior year, over the following summer, over his senior year, and then the following. I'll be working with him per our agreement through his freshman year of college. And what are your thoughts on this becoming a legacy that he leaves behind, a micro legacy or a legacy that he leaves behind as he moves into college?
That'll be beautiful. Oh God. I mean, I'm just getting goosebumps thinking about it. That'd be fantastic.
It must be wonderful as a parent to see this evolution in your son. Do you see this? Do
Yes.
you see what, and I don't know, no is a perfectly acceptable answer. Do you see your daughter, Maya, who's a few years younger, do you see her picking up any of the things that are happening with Sean? They're very close. Do you see a feedback loop? We've already talked about that one exercise, but are there feedback loops that are happening where she may be getting excited and creating her own version of the experiences that Sean is going through right now?
It's funny you would ask about it. When I spoke to a relative in Sri Lanka about doing these workshops and stuff, he had asked me if he needs a teaching assistant to help teach and like whatnot. So he said he can provide one of his students to be Sean's teaching assistant. Sean, me, and Maya were talking about this, and we were like, oh, Maya will be such a perfect teaching assistant to do this. And it'll also give up, they'll feel useful about doing something different for their summer break. I think in so many levels, this is going to help them just have a complete summer, not just laze around and have fun, but we did talk about it and she was very excited about it. Maya loves to do that anyways.
It's a great bonding thing for her, and it gives her a chance
Yes,
to step up really early. The earlier, the better. And it also fulfilled one of your primary needs this summer, which was to spend time with your parents. We wanted to
that's
kind of
right.
get that perfect opportunity. And then some room for him, Sean, to come back either at the beginning of the summer or the end of the summer to do this medical.
Yes.
We've talked about that too. I'm very grateful for your generosity of providing this time today.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good. My
What,
pleasure.
and you know that I'm only going to keep this one-to-one here. It's just how I work. But I am expanding into India and a couple of other countries as part of the group from which you came, this physician moms group. I work with a great many Indian families, and in your case, Indian and Sri Lankan, but South Asian and Asian families.
South Asian, yes.
What would be your best advice for parents, Indian or not, looking at this process back when you were looking and being maybe confused about the process of what does it take to apply to college? If you were to speak to other moms of 8th graders, 9th graders, potential 10th graders, what would you tell them based on what you've learned so far?
So I think it depends very much on the kid, Dan. Again, some kids are just not motivated. Some kids are. I think just the family that we are, my main focus was I know my son is motivated and he's going to do great. He will get into a very good school. I knew that. But I think I just wanted him to be guided in the correct way, all the different aspects. Because before I met with you, I met with the school counselor and they were talking about all the 100 scholarships that are available that are not tapped into. It's like a full-time job to even keep track of what's out there, to make use of it. Those are not things that I had the time or I can expect Sean to do at his age. I definitely wanted somebody overlooking him just because of a busy lifestyles to keep him on track, show him, hey, look into this, look into that. And those are things that we spoke about when we first met. So it was just to really develop his personality as a whole that I was excited about. And when we finished our conversation, when I spoke to Sean and I was like, what do you think? Do you think this will be a good idea? And Sean was like, yeah, I think it'll be a good idea. And then what I told him was, I think, Sean, this is one of the best gifts that we can give you at this age, because I think you're just going to be a really rounded human being by having, direct you in all these different aspects, which you're getting outside of what Amma and Appa and your teachers are able to do. So yes, for that, really, we're very grateful and we're just so happy right now with how it's been going.
And I'm so grateful for the opportunity. You talked about it before. This also gives Sean, and we've talked about it with respect to this summer project that he's got going on in India and Sri Lanka. This also gives Sean the opportunity to pay it forward, be of service to others, right? Which I think is something that we talked about before. I think it's an imperative for your family. If you were to speak to other moms, you did your undergraduate work in India, to Indian moms and dads, but Indian moms who are looking into the process of hiring an advisor or mentor. I'm not talking about me. If you were to say, based on your experience, what would you say are the 3 most important things that they need to know in considering bringing somebody on to help their sons or daughters?
I think the number one thing is, I think we want the kids to feel that they're being nagged, because we're always telling them do this, do that, especially at the age that they're at the teenage age. It's just so fragile. We want to make sure that they just do happy stuff with us and all this hard stuff is taken care of by somebody else in a better way than we would. So that's my number one thing. I don't want the kids to feel nagged about doing things in a timely manner or in a certain way. The second thing is I wanted my child, besides education and getting into a good school, just develop other aspects of him. I didn't think that it would be as effective in you figuring out. I didn't know about the exercises that you do or how you tap into his brain to see how the different parts of his brain works. It's fantastic that it's done this way. So many things that are there in the child, which we don't recognize or see, comes out by these exercises that you have them do. The third thing would be I have the ease to talk to you about things which are not even related to college or even about his social setup, which I'm so grateful for because there's nobody else who I can talk to try to make my kid understand, what I'm going through. And this is not something that I saw coming at all. And I don't know why I opened up to you when I did. It was just like, maybe Dan can help me because I can't think of anybody else who I can explain this to who can talk to my kid. A lot of times, Sean doesn't like me sharing anything about him. Even when they crack jokes about my friends or whatever, and when I'm on the phone with my friends, if I'm like, you know what Sean and Maya said, they hate that I do that. They're like, oh, Amma, why do you tell everything we tell to your friends? But I would say it was such a funny comment. They would enjoy it if I told them, but that's just the way kids are. What we share should stay within us. Like they don't like me sharing it with my friends and stuff. So I
Sure.
really like the fact that talk to you about it, and even the way you responded to it, it just gave me comfort that it's just going to make things better.
I'm so grateful for that piece of it. Every relationship I have with my mentees and their parents is slightly different, but this is
Sure.
part of the empowerment of taking not just your son from exceptional to unstoppable. It's also, I like to say I'm 90% in the empowering my mentees business and 10% in the parental anxiety relief business, but it goes deeper than that. This is a family thing, isn't
Sure.
it? Right?
Yes, it is.
This
It
is
very
about
much is.
helping your kids. And the very last question I'll ask you is, over the short period we worked together, do you ever look at your son, and now Maya as well, and say, who is this kid? I've never seen these. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sean's sense of humor. He's got impeccable timing in what he says. I always keep telling him that because I don't think he realizes how funny he is a lot of times. And with your interview with him, when you were talking about the band and who are no good or who are up to no good, and you were like, what would you name that band? And he was like,
It was
endless possibilities. Just for him to think in that spur of moment. Yesterday we went to this Japanese restaurant and they were all having sushi, and we ordered this habanero sushi. They said only one of those sushi had the habanero. All four of us tried, and Sean said he had it because he just couldn't stop drinking water for the longest time, and there were two left. Maya and Ivan said they're going to go for it because they thought the habanero was gone and Sean had it. So Maya and Ivan just put it in their mouth, and Sean was like, "Maya, I didn't get the habanero right." It's not as funny and as witty when I say it, but right when Maya put it in her mouth, like he said it, and we were just laughing out so loud because Sean was like, "You should have just seen Maya's face." You know what I'm talking about. His sense of humor and his calming personality, I just love that about him. He doesn't let any of us freak out about anything. He just puts it down immediately. No matter how wrong he is, he doesn't wake up till 12, 1 o'clock sometimes. And then he comes and then he wants to have cereal. And when I react to it,
nothing wrong with cereal, but to this, and we'll finish up with this, that sense of humor, that just hysterical sense of humor. Every time I meet with him, there's different lights in the room. I never know what kind of colors, or he really loves colors. That comment that he made and how fast he was with the name of the song, and just he looked up for a second. There's been a great change in his thinking about things and then realizing there's no such thing as perfect, just coming out with it. It was a wonderful comment that he made, and even educating you on things. The last comment I'll make is that humor, you have this wonderful sense of humor, so does your husband. Humor is an important part, in my opinion, of emotional intelligence, right? The ability to relate to other people. What's your view on that?
oh, absolutely. You always want to be around people who are funny because it's just more fun to be around them. You feel they're very lighthearted. There's nothing bad being emitted by that person who's got that sense of humor. So it's just overall one of the best qualities I feel a human being can have.
Wonderful. Priya, again, I'm so grateful for your time. I always just love our conversations. And this won't be the last time, assuming we're able to interview again. I'm putting together my first book, as we talked about, and then you and Sean will each be chapters in that book, because this is not a book on how to get into college. This is celebrating Sean's successes as well as your success as a parent. And this is going to be a great help to moms and to teens around the world. And again, I'm so happy and grateful and feel just so blessed to be working with you. Was this useful, and was this interesting, and was this fun for you today?
Very much. It was a lot of fun. I had a great time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It truly was.
Yeah, please give my best to everybody else in the family.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye
Thank
for
you.
now.
Wish you the same.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Jack.